Well, welcome to the panel discussion on how HR leaders cohesively reboard their workforce. I'm Dr. Troy, and to one of my sides is Benjamin Toy. We're co-hosting today's event. And did you know that in a recent clickboarding survey that 35% of companies have no formal onboarding program? And we expect that the number of organizations with no formal reboarding program are actually going to be much higher. That's why we thought this panel discussion was so important, because it brings a very hot topic in the HR world to the forefront. And we don't know all the answers. So we brought the pros to help us. So they're going to help us and help you create a talent retention reboarding plan.
Awesome. Dr. Troy and I frequently discuss what's happening in the marketplace. From our research, we have clients talking to us and asking us questions. And we've had some reliable resources with some good ideas on reboarding, but we didn't feel it was completely in our wheelhouse.
And so, in other words, what we thought is, well, we've got the questions, but not the answers. So we came up with creating a document that had 21 questions that you can use to jumpstart your thinking. And of course, there's more that you're going to want to add to it, but it is just a start to get your mind thinking and going. And hopefully you've already downloaded the talent retention reboarding question checklist by now. And if not, you'll have an opportunity to hear some instructions on how to do that from Ben later on.
And serving on our panel today are three human resources pros and people Dr. Troy and I know. First, we have Tia Beggs, managing partner of the McKinley Group. Next is Elizabeth Gist, director of HR at Carolina Foothills Federal Credit Union and CEO of Grow Leaders Consulting. And third is Eloise Tommy, people success leader and founder of the Human Resource Collective. Welcome, ladies. And since we can easily access your LinkedIn profiles and bios with links that we provide, I would love for each of you to tell us one or two things not on your resume. All right, let's start with Tia.
Hi, everyone. Two things that you can definitely not find on my resume. One is that I have a great sense of humor. So if you are not ready to laugh, I'm probably not the person you want to be talking to, because you will get some laughter out of you at some point today or whenever we meet. And I'm an avid love of the game of golf. I actually absolutely love to watch my daughter play golf, and anybody else that's talking about it, I'm your person. I'm there.
Awesome. Elizabeth.
All right, so thank you so much for having me today. So two things that you probably won't find on my resume. My maiden name is actually Benjamin. So Ben, we are connected. So I know all about Ben's that jam. I get you.
Nice.
The second thing is going to be, you can probably tell that I am the most focused if you hear or see these things. The Eye of the Tiger theme song, of Mike and Ike's original fruit on my desk, and stickies and a dry erase board. I'm all in.
Nice. Eloise.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Two things, I went a different direction, but two things that are not on my LinkedIn profile. One, I was in a Saturday Night Live sketch when I lived in New York City. And every now and then that episode will replay at, in the middle of the night, and I'll get a message from someone I've known in my life, like, dude, I think I just saw you on Saturday Night Live, like opening monologue. That's true. That is me. And my mom did judge my outfit. And then the second thing is I'm a mom of three, and my firstborn was actually born with the same syndrome as featured in Wonder. So I actively advocate for children with craniofacial differences in my free time, and it's a passion project of mine to bring kindness to the world. So those are the two things not really on my resume.
That's awesome. Thank you, ladies, for sharing and joining. And So before we get into the first segment of questions, though, a couple housekeepings. We wanted to make sure that this was a meeting and not just a webinar, so you get to see some other folks right away, but then we can have some interaction as we need to. But for the next session, if you would please, if you're not a panelist, turn your video off and go ahead and put it on mute. And then in the top right, we recommend going into the speaker view. Unless you want to see everybody in gallery view, speaker view makes it much more engaging and focus friendly. So that being the case, there we go. We are all there. All right. What was the last one? And if you do have any questions during the session, the panel, please message, just put it in the chat, and either Dr. Troy or myself will be able to ask them when the timing's right. So, and if you've not downloaded the talent retention reboarding question checklist, I have added it into the chat under a quick link where you can quickly download it. And there's an orange download bar to quickly get there, and it'll be in your email. So.
And Ben, let's make sure that not everybody is you. So remind everyone how to do that if your name show up.
They're new folks. Okay, so yeah, some of you have joined and are listed as Benjamin Toy or Benjamin Toy. On your video screen, right click, you'll see a rename option, and please rename yourself to you. It makes it a little bit easier for us to know who all is here, because we do have a lot of Benjamins. Wow, it's all about the Benjamins today. So here we go. That's easy.
Well, you and Elizabeth, I mean, you know, you're connected, and so now, like, here we go. I mean,
Yeah.
And if you cannot figure it out, or if you happen to be mobile, send a message with who you are, and I can rename you. So I'll be working in the background. So feel free to do that. Okay. And I think
awesome.
We are good to go.
Okay, good. So we're going to get started with our first segment of questions. But before we do, we've got a poll that we'd like to hear some information from you. So that your first opportunity to be a little more interactive in the process. Ben, can you launch the first poll? So there we go. So it's, do you currently have a reboarding plan? Now, you may have ideas for one. That's okay. But what we're looking for is, do you have a finished plan that you are already ready to present? We would like to know that. So please respond now. And Ben, you're tallying up the results. I know it's just the numbers are just piling in. I feel like it's an election result. We're kind of waiting to see what our answer is going to be.
We've only got 42% voting so far, so keep on voting.
Keep on voting. Yeah, just because you turned off your camera and your mics didn't mean we want you to go away. So, and make sure that you're asking questions in the chat so that Ben and I can also filter those questions in amongst the ones that we were thinking of addressing. And again, if you've not downloaded your checklist, please make sure you do that. Ben, how are we doing? What's our number?
We are still at 42%. Can everybody, you might have to click launch poll or see poll if it popped up on your screen. You may also not be at a spot where you can do that, and we want you to be safe if you happen to be remote or mobile at this point. So, yeah. All right, but we are going to end it now. There we go. The results.
63% of us are no, and then we've got 38% that is in the works. So once again, supports pretty much what we thought would be the case. So, let's first of all mention that in your plan that you have, I want to make sure that you understand this. Safety and security will be paramount. And for now, you've already been dealing for over a year with safety and security issues. We did not include that in today's conversation. Obviously, if you want to ask some additional questions, that would be certainly appropriate. But the ones we're dealing with, the panelists, will not talk about safety and security, but we want you to make sure that you knew that we were definitely considerate of that, and we felt that that would be already included in your overall plan. So now it's time to get some answers to some questions, and so I am going to address my very first question to Tia. So Tia, you're all ready? I'm teeing it up to Tia. Here we go. You like humor, right? Here we are having some fun. And did you say you love golf?
Golf. I'm swinging.
Yes. Was I not brilliant? Tee it up for Tia. I mean, can it be any better? Okay. All right. Enough of me. So Tia, in the area of accountability, What will be required from leaders and team members of both in-person and remote work settings, such as how do leaders adopt new ways of leading that replaces the walking, leading by walking around?
So pretty much it's really going to mirror the in-office setting, the remote setting. So you're going to need to bring your full authentic self. The leaders are going to need to do that. We're going to have our immediate wellness checks in the morning, which pretty much will be like your team ramp up, when you're getting together, rah, 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 this is what we're going to do for the day. We're going to do the same thing remotely. But at this point, you're going to also ask, what is it that I can do for you? Because you need to engage and let them know that you are really being authentic and you do really care. The concern is there. So everything with the organization, it's really the people that need it. So as a leader, you're going to have to engage and just let them know that, hey, if you're not fully equipped, let me know. What is it that I can give you? Also, you're going to remind them to take breaks. So again, you're going to mirror the remote setting to look like, in the office. You get up, you walk around. So as I would do, I would come from my upstairs office to go downstairs to the kitchen, which is now the lunchroom, and walk around. Just try to make things seem a little more like we're in office. And for the team leaders, I think you're going to consistently need to have the check-in place. So if you want to do a 15-minute break, hop into a Zoom call, you see me stretching or doing some mindfulness, listening to some relaxing music, just keep everything being where we're fully engaged with each other. And keep your schedule like your schedule in the office. We all have our calendars. We're working remotely with our laptops. So set reminders that, hey, I have a 15-minute meeting. Just keep the same process in place. It's just that home is now the organization. Does that answer your question?
That's great. Eloise, I know that question was really important to you about, just not leading by walking around. How do your thoughts now either compare or contrast to what Tia told us?
Well, I think they compare and enhance. I don't think there's a one size fits all for every organization, but I think all of these are great ideas to keep in mind, and each leader will be different in how they approach it. I've seen some leaders take very seriously these blocks of time of no meetings also, so that there is a more organic opportunity for people to connect. I think this is also where HR can partner with internal systems or IT to find incredible solutions for connectivity, for ways in which people can collaborate and talk more openly. So my team actually became even closer when we were all remote. It was a common thing we all had. It wasn't, the bulk of the people in the office and one remote. We all had this same place we were coming from. And so our chat feature on Microsoft Teams became how we lived. We celebrated all the personal things. We celebrated, some wins. We celebrated our failures. It was just this place we could come together. The other thing as a leader, in the HR space, I made it mandatory that once a day, at least 3 times a week, you have got to take a meeting walking. And you've got to show that you are doing that as a leader as well. So some of the advice you're giving other people, you've got to walk that walk and show, that you're open to connecting in different ways and meeting them maybe where they are. Not everyone's going to have their best day in a remote environment. Sometimes they're going to struggle. So maybe asking what they need. I was constantly polling my team and then giving that kind of playbook to other managers that I was helping coach.
Right. And sometimes it actually requires us to be more intentional in our leadership with individuals, right? When we're not actually seeing them all the time. So really some great insight there. Thank you.
Do you think leaders are going to get accustomed to the naps that are between the meetings that we've grown accustomed to? Is that going to be when we're actually in person? Elizabeth, respect. How are these feelings addressed without allowing them to overtake operational conditions of business?
I think first and foremost, I believe as leaders, it's important to really understand what I like to call the drumbeat or the sound frequency of the employees as well as the business. You have to know what's going on. You have to know the frequency of what's happening in the organization. I think for the sake of time, we can sum it up in probably 3 areas. So one being intentionality and awareness, which will actually pour right back into what Tia and Eloise just said. You have to be intentional about having genuine care, genuine concern about your employees. And this can be done through such things as, stay interviews, dialogue, intentional presence, being present in the moment, and really caring and acknowledging the concerns and not treating it as something that you could not be bothered with, of something of genuine concern for leaders. I think also if you can focus on small wins, what's that low hanging fruit that can help you win more credibility with your employees? What are the things that are easy, cost efficient? You may not have resources to pour into all of these great different tools, but there are free things like dignity, respect, empowerment that you could do. So you could do some of those things, which would lead to greater victories. The third thing I would say would be ultimately tying the goals back to the bigger picture. Do your employees understand how what they do contribute overall to the organization? They have to feel valued. They have to feel important. When you start thinking about productivity and all the things that are, would impede that, it's more than likely it's because they don't know the value that they bring to the bigger picture. So if you can implement genuine care, low-hanging fruit wins, and then also tying it back to the organizational goals and structure, guaranteed recipe for success. That do it for you?
Yeah, it's really great. So in thinking about that, in looking at it, can you wrap up one more time those 3 items? I think you mentioned 3 things without
Sure.
the detail, just what were the 3, so everybody can go, oh, it's these 3 things, 1, 2, 3. What are they?
Sure. Intentionality, awareness, small wins that lead to bigger victories, and then also tying personal contribution to organizational goals.
Okay, good. And I bet you may have, if you all haven't, there's an article from Harvard Business Review called The Power of Small Wins. And so I don't know if you got that, Elizabeth, from The Power of Small Wins, or just the concept that you celebrate the little victories along the way. But The Power of Small Wins, what's really awesome in that article is it talks and helps leaders understand how they can motivate people. Because one of the takeaways is that how the employee feels at the end of the day is how they are more likely going to start the next day, unless they've had trauma that's happened in their life. And if they do, then that's going to be, an outlying activity. But for the common individual, how they feel about the organization on the day that they leave is how they're going to feel when they come back in. That's why this ReBOARDING is so important, so that our employees, your employees, will actually feel that they are taken care of, and that they have respect. And of course, based on our other situation where they know that they're accountable for their jobs, and it won't just be because leaders are walking around, but because leaders are exhibiting some care. So the other 2 panelists, you're welcome to feed in on this question if you'd like. I'm going to give you a second, and if not, then I'll go to the 3rd question.
I would just echo just connecting the employees' contributions and their roles to the mission and the values. I've been saying that for so long, but most importantly, recently I've been talking about it. I think that really cuts through to why people return, why people want to bring their friends with them to their company, why they want to enjoy, the social media of the company and share articles. It connects them to something more deep. And I just couldn't echo that more loudly. I think I wrote it down in my notes for today too. So it's exciting to hear it said too.
Great. Well, Eloise, while we have you on the screen, we're going to go to you for our 3rd question. And it's again, going back into the accountability. Now, again, this idea is in the ReBOARDING is to think about how to make sure that our leaders are focusing on accountability, right? And so we know that there are a lot of different ways that accountability can be handled. And so I know our the question is going to be around core values, but I also want you all to feel comfortable to talk a little bit about the change that you may be seeing in accountability that goes from just managing people's time to managing their productivity. So the first part of the question that will actually deal with your core values presented and reinforced within this new workspace requirement. So how are company core values presented and reinforced within the new workspace requirements?
Right. I mean, honestly, part of what we have always had to do is be the champions of culture and the values, right, as HR professionals. But I think one of our greatest values is also making sure that every employee, every leader knows that it's their job too. So I'll just start by saying that. I think when this pandemic first hit, we went remote. We were sort of all looking for things that would guide our way and would help us through this. And I think that's what a core value should do. That's what that mission and those values should serve as guideposts and light our way. And if they're not resonating, what do we do about that? When you talk about, how to weave it into the fabric of the company, I don't think that changes in a hybrid or remote first environment. I think that these are opportunities for us to show up and bring them more into the conversation rather than just words that we wrote on a wall of an office that we don't go to anymore. So, this is where managers and employees can talk about value moments in your town halls, where this needs to be brought up in team meetings and also in one-on-ones. We need to connect the values to employee performance as well. And that's how you can drive more of a value-based culture. So whether it's monthly or quarterly meetings to talk about performance, this is where you can talk about whether they are living those values, how they have, give great examples. The other thing that I'd mention in terms of accountability is this is one where leaders need to be held accountable as well at all levels of the company. I think we've all probably been in those companies where maybe some leaders were not living those values and no one was really doing anything about it. And I think the healthiest cultures are when everyone is held accountable. The other, exercise I was a part of that was one of the most rewarding was actually studying our values to make sure they still resonate. And it's something we decided to do on a more regular basis as a company. And it helps the culture stay healthy. It helps the people connect cross-functionally. And out of it have always come really wonderful mentoring relationships throughout the company as well. So there were core values teams, there were surveys, there was data, there was a whole framework put in place, but it allowed for the conversation to go a bit more deep than, there were 4 people that founded the company. Those are the values. Those might be different in 10 years when you're a much bigger organization. You may not have had diversity, inclusion, and belonging at the heart of founding those core values and the mission of the company. So I do think it should be an evergreen process. It shouldn't just, be something that's plastered on the website and forgotten about.
It's changing the narrative, having the narrative evolve as the organization evolves. So even though we may not have originally thought of it as the forefathers or foremothers of an organization, but as the topic is popular in the workforce or popular today, then we can incorporate that. So for Elizabeth, for Tia and Elizabeth and Tia, I want to tee up a little something for you. Eloise, you can always, chime back in, but a little bit, a new little question kind of got me thinking on this. And then I want to really talk a little bit about how you manage to the core values of an organization and not just to the number of widgets that you were supposed to get. So I want to talk a little bit about that in this in this time frame, and to really expand on that and expand, because we're talking about accountability. Is the difference between managing people by the time that they spend, that's that micromanaging, versus the opportunity to manage to the production of the individual and what they're doing, because we're going to see that flexibility come forward in the marketplace. So all of you now talk over each other. Come on, let's have a conversation.
Oh, me. I'll go.
Okay, you go.
Well, I'll just say that, again, echoing what my panelists are saying, this is my crew now, so I'm ready. But just echoing what they've been saying, really living by example, really demonstrating what it is. And, even saying, hey, we created this mission, this value, 20 years ago when the forefathers were here and started, laying the first brick of cement, on the building. It's not relevant anymore. So I think it's being agile, being able to change and evolve, being comfortable to change. Change is disruptive. We don't like change, it's uncomfortable, but also being able to say, this is good change. This is something that, we can continue to grow upon. So even managing time and understanding, hey, it's not necessarily with you sitting there for 8 hours and giving 8 hours, but are you giving me value? Are you giving input? Are you giving impact? And where are you, are you leading? And are you leading with heart? These days, and most of the time, we haven't been really taught or encouraged to lead with heart. And that's something that we can do that will help add the value, that helps, take the focus off of 8 hours. And maybe we were able to get accomplished in what would have taken us 8 hours. Maybe we did it in 3 hours. So how can we kind of push it some more to see what else we can do? So I think it's just being open and agile.
Good.
I would like to add that we should just be able to also come to meet in the middle. So the employees, the team, the managers, all the way up the ladder, we will have to have conversations where we realize there's going to be pushback, but at the same token, we meet in the middle to decide how we're going to move forward. It doesn't always have to look like the straight and narrow. You get on the highway, there's 4 lanes. You get in the merge, you go over and over and over. Well, some drivers get on and jump right into the fast lane, but we have to have the conversation that I can come this way, get back off and come back on again, or just stay in the middle where I can coast and be safe. If I want to go back to the slow lane and deal with some things that are just not moving forward for the company, then I can stay there. But the option to meet in the middle, I think will, help us progress in other areas for programs that you do create, you implement. We really have to learn to walk the walk from the top down, not just the employees and the managers.
I think that meet in the middle is important, especially because we're facing a workforce that's burnt out. And the number one word in New York Times published last week is languishing. I mean, we're looking at a mental health crisis we've never dealt with before, and it is our jobs. It's on our shoulders, right? And so I think that meet in the middle is important. I think celebrating empathy and equal parts of accountability. I mean, if you went to a meeting, you celebrated someone that exhibited high emotional intelligence and you're using that language, it makes it okay to show high levels of emotional intelligence. I think that doesn't have to be language only HR uses. So we're trying to give those tools to the leaders and the managers of all levels to be able to, be vulnerable, talk about empathy. What does that look like right now? And celebrating maybe a manager that reports into you who let their team leave early one day because they had, performed so high, the week before, and they're burnt out, and we need to look for those signs and meet them in the middle, like Taya said.
Yeah. And Ben, I know you're not on the panelists, but I just want to ask you, because you also, run a business. So, these things are very practical for you. So when we talk about things like accountability and respect, specifically in this section of the panel discussion, how do those relate to you and your work?
Well, we've been operating the one business outdoors consistently, but with a crew that had already been there. We are now entering a new phase where the new hires have to come into a new environment, and so we're adapting into the protocols that we have to handle with new folks. And so the question now becomes, how do you address the mask, the no mask, here's the standard, what standard are we going to go with? But also just letting them be informed of whatever our decision is and letting them make the choice based on the hiring process, not to surprise them along the way. So that's been, normally we hire and have to let people know you're going to be outside in 100-degree heat 6 to 7 hours a day. Can you handle it? Well, now we have to add that on plus a couple other things, but we do that before the hire happens. So there's no confusion or mystification when they get there.
Yeah. And I know that with the folks that I'm working with, when we talk about this reboarding, bringing people back in, it's important for leaders to understand that when they are present and when everyone was present inside the office environment, they actually got a break. Because if the leader wasn't that good, the other people sort of filled in the gaps. There's nobody filling in the gaps when it's virtual. You are on your own. So the leader has to be even sharper than before. So the reboarding plan needs to really include some very specific instructions as to what they would like the leader to do to help with the follow-up. Don't assume that everyone can connect the dots, and it's not an insult to help people connect the dots. It's just good leadership to help make sure that everyone is on the same page. And the other thing that was also coming forward in this time was a lot more resurgence toward managing to core values. So when instead of just managing people based on whether did you get this number of accounts or did you do this amount of work, but it was to be able to create conversations around the values of them completing that work and making sure that people knew what their job was and how it connected to someone else. So. All right, well, this is great. So ladies, anything else on this section before we go to our next section of questions? Anything you want to chime in with, please?
I think if you don't know, ask. And so, you know, polling, asking these questions, do these resonate? If they're not coming up in regular conversation and meetings you're in, if those words aren't being used and said, then maybe they're not resonating and it's time to check. So just, I think one of my pulses was, do I hear it? Do I hear the words being used actively? Do I hear it during coaching conversations or performance reviews? That's when I knew that they were the right words that really were changing the narrative.
Cool, great. All right, so we're ready for our second round of questions, but we're going to start again with another poll. So this is for you. And we want you just to ask honestly, think about this and go, you may have challenges in all three areas, but the idea here is to say that our greatest challenge to maintain a cohesive culture will be with the workforce that is either in person, remote, or hybrid. I also want to remind you that while you're voting, also, if you have comments that you would like to make, I mean, these panelists have said some really awesome pieces. Please put it in the chat so that we can hear and reinforce what you're doing. It's the best way we can help you be active. You all knew coming into this, it was a panel discussion, so we knew the panelists were going to get most of the time to talk, but we do want to hear from you. Ben, did we up our percentage from the last time? Do we have more than 42% of the people playing?
We do not, unfortunately.
Oh my gosh. So I'm not sure what's
level of
happening.
engagement.
Yes, what's happened on our poll here. So
There we go. 42%. We're back at it.
okay, we're back at 42. So that's good. So somehow we've got 58%. We need to listen. You all work in an environment where you want people to be engaged. Come on, play. I knew that would be a little fun there. Little tough talking Troy coming in. Oh, I have somebody who says, I am engaged. Okay, thank you very much for that. That's right. Message to everyone. I'm engaged. And I hope you don't mean put a ring on it, because if so, we're going to leave that for Beyonce.
Okay, Dr. Troy, I'm supposed to be the funny one today.
I'm sorry.
But he's stealing my original joke, you know.
I'm just going to yell 4 already, right? I'm already 4.
Right. And you know, it's no surprising. Look at our poll. It was split
That's
between remote
fascinating.
and hybrid. I mean, realistically,
Awesome.
that's kind of what we
Wow.
thought might happen.
Yeah.
Because why? We're used to the in-person. It's this new environment that we need to now deal with. All right. So, Ben, I think you're up with the first round of questions.
Right. In this round, we're going to ask Elizabeth the question on the topic of noises. What are the sources of distractions that will interfere with team members' productivity?
Well, there's two sources, in my opinion. So there is internal or external. Let's start with external. So of course, going through last year, there's news, there's a whole pandemic happening outside, there's life concerns, there's outside commitments, there's mental health struggles, there's labor market struggles, there's, staffing struggles, all kinds of things. And then on the internal side, there could be, maybe there's been changes to ways of working that are different, that are now new, that are uncomfortable. Remember, we said earlier, change is disruptive. So there's also employee chatter. There's that good old rumor mill that seems to show up every so often, that just shows up. Misalignment on mission and values, which we've talked about as well, Have we lost credibility with our employees? Have we done what we said we were going to do? Have we had a clear communication strategy? There's so many things that can add to those noise frequencies that increases the amount of noise. But even for me, I feel like even though it's impossible to get ahead of every single thing that I've just named out, I think companies, organizations, HR professionals, whomever, can take a very valiant approach by just tackling those things head on, you know, not letting it increase to the point to where now it is the culture. That is what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. You can do those things by strengthening your proactive or being proactive in communication, strengthening your communication strategy, setting clear goals and expectations. I think we understand that when an employee is frustrated, it's because there are unmet expectations. Somewhere along the lines, we have not met their expectations. And I think somewhere along the lines, we forgot that we're supposed to meet expectations of employees, just like they're supposed to meet expectations of the organization. And I think also, you know, you can look at things to restructure. Maybe you can add a little bit more investment into the break rooms, into areas that kind of help filter out some of that noise. Can you change some of your policies that help, you know, maybe deal with some of those concerns with school closings or, you know, things like that? I know one of the biggest wins that we put into place to help with some of that concern was a bring your child to work policy. So when the employees were going through the hybrid school schedules, some of them were able to bring their children in and actually have their children.
Uh-oh.
This is what we have to deal with.
This is
Yes,
live, so here we
exactly.
go. So Eloise and Tia, pick up on this. Tell us a little bit about what you're thinking in regards to noises, when you hear about noises.
Right. You know, we did approach it and it was sort of, I wanted them to do some research on like, how can we enhance our remote policy to infuse at the beginning empathy? We'll get to accountability and what employees need to sign up for, but let's look at empathy. Most policies are not really written from an empathetic place, right? It's rules of the road. Here's what you do, stick to these things. And it makes the employee feel like a number and not a human. So we wanted to approach it from really a human point of view. The other thing that I saw really recently, I don't know where I was the IBM Pledge and like their work from home pledge. It was a grassroots thing that employees started themselves. And it was advocacy for employees on how they would help each other. And it just changed the game. It allowed you to be human at work. And I think in doing that, parents, you know, people that are dog owners, people that have shared working environments with another person in their house, like it did drive higher productivity and accountability because they were seen, they were accepted. There was a part of this where you did belong to something bigger than you, that you respected how they were approaching it. So they were going to go to, you know, greater lengths to eliminate some of that other noise maybe that would be in their home. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm back. I'm sorry.
Welcome back, Elizabeth.
All my noise started messing with my internet.
You froze in a cool way though. Like you looked really
Did I
cool.
have a cool face? Was I like,
you look
okay,
like you were
cool.
about to make an awesome point too.
Okay, cool. Okay, good. I hope you took it home for me though.
We did. That girl that you said that was your team, the girl power brought it home. So
I'm telling you, this is my crew. I'm telling you.
Your crew, that's right. Yeah, that's true. So Tia, on this whole conversation of noises, I just wanted to just check in with you a little bit. Tell me about the noise that you would think that we need to include in the reboarding plan that are the distractions at home, the distractions in the remote environment that we need to make sure that are addressed in the plan. There could be some expectations on the part of the employer to make sure that those distractions, such as childcare, laundry, whatever. So are there any noises like that that come to mind for you, and some advice you want to give to your fellow teammates here?
Sure. Well, of course, you know, everyone are now, they're becoming the teacher. So the homeschooling issue. So I think that employers, leaders need to become a little more flexible. Like myself, I'm up at dark 30. The rest of the world is sleeping. Is it okay for me to do some of my work so that I can then take the time off that I need when it's time for me to jump into my other role to be the teacher to help with homeschooling or chores for that matter, or take care of, be the caregiver for someone else. So I think that what the noise there is just really altering the time schedule. Give that flexibility to say, okay, well, she has to do this from this time to this time. We're going to make that be her downtime or lunch per se, and just, allow me that time to do it because I'm still completing the task. What that does is that creates the trust between the two of us. And it lets me know that, yes, she's continued to add value. She wants to be here. She's still engaged. And oh, we've made it work. It's been a win-win. And that's really the noise for me. It has to become the win-win. It just can't work one way. It has to work both ways, especially in remote environments.
So Eloise, we're going to go to you now with a topic that's near and dear to your heart, and the diversity, equity, and belonging is the term I believe I've heard you use. DIB, I had to look up DIB because I thought, well, I know my dibs on things, but I wasn't really sure. So because DEI is what's really popular, but I really appreciated you bringing that into my lexicon.
Yeah,
language.
We were defining, yes. So we were defining these words. It was important. We were all aligned on their definitions. There was a little bit of education to do at different, levels within our organization. Belonging felt like it was missing. It just did. It felt like that was a part of our culture that was critical. So we wanted to make sure it was a part of what we called our team that was focused on this. And, I've done this at startups, I've done it at growth companies, I've done it at public companies. It's a different thing in each company, but I think what ties it together is that if you don't have a foundation of respect in the company that Elizabeth and Teo were talking about earlier, if that doesn't exist, your strategy is going to fail. So I think setting that stage with the executive team or whomever you're working with at the outset, it's important that we own that and we talk about what a foundation looks like before we even build a strategy. For me, what I've done is really tried to make sure that the company and every leader had the tools to know what it sounded like and looked like to hold space for equity seeking groups. A lot of times groups were coming together wanting either, to form an employee resource group or more of a looser grassroots group. And it was coming through a manager, and managers were maybe handling that awkwardly. And so we were giving them some tools on what that sounded like, making sure we knew what the investment would be in groups like that. And that was an incredible way for our company to celebrate and create a sense of belonging and inclusion. Something that we need to talk about always is unconscious bias. It's being aware of it, it's challenging it, it's training that's required, but also celebrated. We created a culture of learning within the organization and, had suggested books. We had book clubs. We had teams that were celebrating different things they were seeing online. We were talking about it very publicly. We were talking about it on social media. We're making people aware of what that sounded like and looked like within the company. The other is, we needed a game plan that offered equal growth opportunities for everyone. So making sure that job postings, it wasn't just going to the person that person knew. It was posted, it was public. There were job fairs for every level within the organization. So looking at that life cycle of hiring, not just external. There's a whole host of things we need to be doing for external hiring, but it's also that internal hiring and making sure we're being inclusive at all levels of the company, especially remote. Maybe some jobs have been posted or celebrated internally. You got to make sure everyone in your organization sees and aware of what's going on for job growth. I'll come back to maybe the hiring, but one of the areas that I think is looked at last is actually the benefits. So when I look at, the benefits and what we can offer people, you can come up with some ideas that are not that costly. You can come up with leave, specific buckets of leave for specific reasons that is targeted at creating a more inclusive environment that really does promote this, sense of belonging for your employees. It shows also in a recruiting sense, it shows even more deeply that a company is committed to these efforts. The other thing I'd mention that I think I'd love, my other panelists, thoughts on is I've seen at companies, CEOs come to me with a checklist, like downloaded from somewhere, and having that voice to take a step back. Let's look at the foundation, like I said, let's have a clear strategy, and let's use the same framework we do for our product launches that we do for this. Let's have goals, let's have data, let's have all of these different tools that we need in our arsenal to really make a difference.
Good. And so you mentioned at least 3 very tangible items. It could have been more, but I was making some notes from what you said. Because, listen, I think we're all tired of just talking about diversity, equity, and belonging or inclusion, and we now need to know what to do. So the plan has to include the what pieces. So 3 things that I got from what you said. And so now Tia and Elizabeth, listen up, because I'm teeing it up for you on this. And that is book clubs. So specifically having an activity like a book club that encourages learning and conversation. Public postings. Now, I'm sure that we all talk about public postings, but there can be more that could be done around that inside the internal aspect. And then you talked about targeting leave categories. So those are 3 very specific things that you can put into your reboarding plan that now go beyond the conversation to something more tactical. And that's really what your reboarding plan is now. It's not the conversation anymore. It's now the tactical items. So Tia, Elizabeth, it's up to you. What are 1 or 2 actual things that we can leave for the individuals listening today that they will put into their plan that is a tactical item that will help in the areas of diversity, equity, and belonging?
Hey, I would like to say you should have the diversity piece at onset. It's not something that you do afterwards. So you're going to talk about it and make it become even like this, a lunch and learn series where they will have to attend a class. The company can create their own diversity and inclusion and belonging curriculum where it's kind of like a university. So they go from class to class to class, and then they get a certificate, which then they graduate, which really hones in on saying that the company is not only talking the talk, but they're walking the walk. Perfect,
great, good. Elizabeth, your time to shine, and don't go mute on us. Come on, Elizabeth, I know you're there. Elizabeth's not here?
I'm here. There we go. I'm here.
Okay.
But for me, in my opinion, I would also just, piggyback off of what my panelists said as well. But I would also focus on internal leadership development, really kind of growing that next level of leaders organically from within. Wherever you can promote and appoint from within, that's going to be key. It's going to show movement. It's going to increase engagement. It's going to increase motivation as well. I also think one thing that's going to be key is reviewing your total reward strategy, your retention benefits, your compensation. Does your compensation scale still align with the current needs that we're facing now? Do you have a large gender gap, pay gap that you need to close? Are there some difficult conversations you get the privilege to have as the HR professionals, and you get to have those moments of influencing? You may not be the key decision maker, but you may be the influencer that will help influence the change. And sometimes influence comes with presenting that very raw data to say, this is a real thing that's happening in our organization, and I'm committed to fixing it.
Good. Now, Ben, I know you're going to tee up the next question, but why don't you read some of the comments before you do that?
Yes. All right. So we got, actually, Sean talked about moving an organization forward while accommodating more than 100+ who have been hired and onboarded virtually without ever being on site. So those are the types of things that require a big plan. So also that's an incredible growth option or growth scenario as well. I have to scroll up pretty high for some of those. Hold on. But I actually, as an employer, I actually have a question that I've posed to other panels before. What is your take on the idea of, because of an industry or the type of business, going after diversity intentionally versus organically, which also might seem awkward in the sense that, okay, I have an outdoor kayaking outfit that we typically only have one type of person that applies. Do we actively go recruit different demographics, or are they not seeking us? Like, how is that perceived if we're to go there? Because we're open to hiring anybody that's qualified. So how does an organization handle that perception to be seen going after a more diverse workforce?
I think you have to be intentional with where you are seeking, meaning your job descriptive, what you're putting out there. Choose certain words. Remember, it's 1,000 and some words in the dictionary, but it's the ones that you're choosing that will resonate with certain people. Make yourself known more in the community. So where are you really going to help people know about your business? Or are you creating an internship program? You're actively going to certain organizations saying, hey, we would like to bring this to your community or to the organization. Would you might have some, people interested? You'd be surprised that, it's a lot of people that are really interested in doing it, and they don't, simply because some of them just don't know where to reach. So if you go to them, it will definitely open that window for you.
Excellent.
100% agree. Yeah.
So,
I agree.
Tia, the next question then, what activities are in place or will be put in place to let people know they belong and not just fit in?
Okay, so for me, we're going to start in the reverse. I had this mapped out perfectly, but I think what companies need to do is to create listening sessions. This has been a really big thing that I've been seeing that's been making a major impact. So the listening session is not just for, you, the leader or the employee, to come and just take away all the negative stuff. No, it's for you to hear what's happening and what we need to do to either improve upon it, provide the resources for it, or build a program around it. Whatever it is, we need to keep the employee engaged and to make them see that they can go further than where they are right now. I think that is really key. Of course, we want ERG groups, as Eloise mentioned. You can't go wrong there. Those are just groups, that the employees put on together themselves, and that they're actively taking on some different challenges that they see or hear or want to expose. This is a place where they can come and be themselves without being judged. I also feel that, employers, they have employee assistance programs. Not a lot of employees know what that is. Not a lot of employees know how to utilize it. They think because the employer is providing it, oh, I'm going to be shunned or looked down upon, or they're going to know my personal business. No, that's not how that works. It's a free resource to help the employees with any challenges. They may just have some questions that they really don't have any other place or persons to reach out to. So, and it's a free resource. So I think educating your team, your community, that this is what we have already in place. And if not, we're willing to create this and actually do the work. I think you'll see that they'll be engaged, they'll be themselves, they're going to want to come, they're going to go above and beyond. They may even, like myself, work all night long simply because I want this. It's like, I have to have this, and you may be bringing out a skill set in someone that they really never knew they had. You could be the one to turn on the light bulb, as I say. And then lastly, I would say do some team talent insight assessments so that you can see what you need for the team. You have a wonderful group of people, but you could be missing some things. And the only way to see what you're missing is to assess everyone on the team. So we have everyone here that's really social, but we need leaders on this side. So how can the team consistently meet its goals? Because we have to, as I say, handhold our social people, because they're a little different on the way that they approach things. Where your leaders or your people who have domineering or follow policies and procedures, they want to get it done. I just want to get it done. So that's my 2 cents on it. But I really think it starts with listening, because communication is key.
It was more like a nickel.
Yeah.
More like a nickel.
And Delmar said you have good suggestions on how to equip employees and leadership to understand the application of DEI. But also the listening sessions. This is also Delmar saying it is a good addition to be prepared to have courageous conversations. So thank you.
And some leaders don't know how to have courageous conversations. So we learned the hard way that we need to add in some training, some conversations about what those look and sound like. In the listening session, especially in software that I've been in for a long time, not everyone really loved my listening sessions. They didn't want to talk. They didn't want to talk in person, definitely not remote. So I did, we need to come up with different ways to learn and listen. And so that might be a quick poll, that might be a longer survey, that might be in, a group like this coming together on Zoom. And sometimes I did have some plants that were willing to share to kick it off. So
Good.
I was just going to add in how that worked for me.
Pushback as well,
Yeah.
And accept the pushback as a positive. Don't look at it as, they're rubbing the grain. Just look at, oh, okay, I didn't really see it that way. Yeah.
And the thing that we're also learning in this reboarding plan that we're thinking about, it's not just what we do day one when we hit the ground, but the plan is actually for a longer period of time of transition, of talking about how individuals, and again, it's reboarding, not just from the concept that, oh, people were remote, I'm now bringing them back in. If you're thinking of your plan just like that, it's a little, you're not as expansive as you could be. So you have to think about it as the reboarding to the workforce based on what your requirements are going to be today. So you've got the flexibility, you've got the virtual, you've got the hybrid, whatever that's going to happen, the in-person, there's going to be some mixture of that. So your reboarding is actually a rethinking of the way you're going to do the workforce. So really good on that topic. So Elizabeth, I didn't want to cut you out. Did you have some closing thoughts before we close here with round 2 of questions?
I did. I was just going to add in my 2 cents and say, save it or spend it. So just along those lines of what everyone had just said, really you're encouraging and actually teaching vulnerability. Hey, this is a safe place for you to be vulnerable. And that's some things that you have to learn. It's brand new. And then there's some things that you have to unlearn. You have to unlearn what was acceptable in the workplace and what was acceptable to talk about. So I think you're doing culture changing. You're also changing dynamics of what has always been. So I think it's important to understand that, just as Eloise and Tia mentioned, you have to have diverse avenues to get to those different diverse concepts. So you have to kind of sometimes reach people where they are and bring them all together in the same place.
Great. All right, so that will complete the round 2 of our questions. And so one of the things we wanted to do is, we've learned this in our Zoom sessions, we need a stretch. We would do Zumba, but I don't think you want to see me in tights. So we're just going to do a Zoom stretch. Okay, you see, like, Tia, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that you were going to be the humor part, like you and I were getting along here, So yeah, we got that. All right, so we're going to do a 2-minute stretch now. So just get up, walk around, do something. You've already put your phone, you already got your phones on, or your computers there on mute and your picture off. So you do your own stretching on your own. I'm going to take my camera off for a moment and do my little stretch. And also during that 2 minute, if you want to write some more information in, then please do, because we've got an exciting third part. So don't think this is the break that you all get to leave. Hang in there. We've got 30 more minutes and we are on time today. You all, brilliant.
2 minutes.
Hopefully you got a nice little stretch from that. I learned a long time ago that your brain will only absorb what your rear end will endure. Yeah, good thing you were all on mute, because it would have been just a hilarious sort of thing. It would have probably crashed the entire panel. So we're not gonna do that. So so we're good here. And Tia, are you back? Okay, Tia's back. Okay, we're good. We got our panelists back. Ben's back. Here we go. So Ben, we're going to now start with another poll. And so for those individuals who may not be able to access the poll, you can put your comments in the chat section. We want you to be able to play. We want to hear your information. We don't want you to feel left out. Gosh, we don't want you just to fit in. We want you to belong. All right, so here we go. So this is our final poll. So according to Culture Amp, and thank you, Eloise, for pointing me in this particular direction, the #1 reason employees left their jobs was due to either a lack of autonomy, inclusion, pay or benefits, the supervisor, stress, or lack of advancement. So the number one reason, according to Culture Amp's most recent survey, that employees leave, give your answer. It's either lack of autonomy, inclusion, pay or benefits, supervisor, stress, or lack of advancement. Again, if you can't find the poll, put your answer in the chat.
And this is also the lack of being able to access polls is one of the things you have to account for sometimes when you're doing something that's external as well, having the different meetings, firewalls where you can't access pop-ups, things like that.
Yeah, but it's always good. Like what we're trying to encourage you today through this example is as you conduct your Zoom meetings, like where you get people have Zoom fatigue, it's because it's just lecturing, but you have different people creating, you have different people responsible for doing different parts, you have interaction for individuals, get them to play, get them to be engaged. It really does help the whole concept. All right, so let's get back on track now. And so let's talk about, oh, I should give you the answer. There's the answer. So, Eloise, what's the correct answer?
Inclusion.
The correct answer is inclusion. That has now eclipsed the supervisor. So think about that. Wow, is that not an aha moment that you can now just sort of take for a moment and absorb? You're right. Most of us would have answered supervisor because that's what we've been told. It's that relationship. But guess what? I still think the supervisor's involved a little bit in this, but people have now more recognized inclusion because now it's the whole organization. It's not just on the shoulders of just the supervisor. It's now the entire organization. And that's what our panelists have been talking about, is how to bring this reporting plan together so that everyone is doing that. So, Eloise, I'm going to now do another diversity question for you. We're going to keep on that diversity theme and work that up. How do you advocate for a strategy with leaders that aren't aware that the company needs one?
So the reason I proposed this question is, I worked for, in my opinion, a very progressive company in New York. They were winning every award from best place to work to most inclusive in the entire advertising industry. And I moved to the South and I worked for a very, large company. And then I also started my consulting business. So I've seen this range of companies. And when you don't work for the one where the CEO is constantly talking about this, what do you do? And I think I've been faced with that multiple times where I'm coming to the table, I'm the only one talking about it. And they're like, okay, go do that checklist, go do these list of projects. And I've needed to come to the table to build a bigger strategy. So some of the ways that I've done this, I don't know if other folks have faced this, but some of my friends have. And some of the things that we've done is working across that leadership team in a one-on-one setting and helping them understand the data around, the company's success and the driving of revenue and growth and scalability when there is a diverse, inclusive, and equitable environment at the company. When employees are actively saying, I feel included, I feel a sense of belonging, and this is my engagement's going up, and all of these other things are going up. So I came to the table in a one-on-one environment. I came with those case studies and some of the data around it. And I came with the internal data. Let's look in the mirror. This is what our data is telling us. This is what the insights are telling me. This is where I think we need to go. And I need your help. And I sort of built advocacy one person at a time. So as a leadership team, we were coming to the conversation with that groundwork already having been laid. And once that executive team's on board, it did require a click down into the leadership and really investing in leaders being on the same page, understanding the strategy, the goals, the metrics we were trying to achieve, and the actions that needed to be put in place, and then holding them accountable, because they're going to make or break this initiative and some of these programs. If they don't create an inclusive environment on their little team, it breaks the whole thing down. So they've got to be a part of the solution. They've got to be a part of the strategy. You mentioned Culture Amp. I also looked at a work human study, and the benefits of when an employee feels included and accepted was engagement was significantly higher, productivity was through the roof, reduced conflict, higher levels of learning. So they saw an uptick in people using that sort of internal university, reduced stress. And so their benefit costs were going down, the healthcare costs were going down. And then in turn, their customers were happy because you got an engaged person who's focused on that client, that knows what they're supposed to be doing every day, and they feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. So we've used these case studies to build our point. It's not a hard sell. They're like, oh, of course we should. You got to give them a role. You got to make sure each leader and each executive understands their role in this. And then you got to, bring up that accountability word again and hold them accountable in their reviews to how they're contributing to this effort.
And there's the bonus information that you just gave. It's like making sure that that your reboarding plan has very specific actions and directions for individuals. And you've been speaking my language. I've been talking about cohesion culture for years. And talking about the belonging, value, and mutual commitment that needs to be a part of it, and why that is and what you get when you get cohesion, you get performance. That's just what you were talking about. If you want engagement, then you get cohesion, which gives you performance, which gives you engagement. But what I really I gathered from what you talked about is this: when you're dealing with individuals who aren't sure they need something, they may object in one of three ways. They either object because they don't understand or misunderstand, but most of them object because they're skeptical. And what you talked about was making sure that data was a part of the information, because data and proof is what solves skepticism. So really great on that. So now, Elizabeth and Tia, let's not leave you out of that. So tell me, what are some of your thoughts in regards to some specifics that we might be able to add to this reboarding plan around strategy that Eloise teed up for us already?
So you both were talking about languages, and people are my love language. I say that. I strongly believe that every organization should have a people strategy. There should be a strategy that is dedicated and focused to the quality of life of your employees. And I think if you even tie it back to what was said, holding the leaders accountable, there's some certain metrics you need to have around people engagement, around quality of life. So I think if you throw back some accountability and say, hey, I know you said you're going to do this plan, but I also want to see the measurement and the ROI of the plan that you implemented. So I think that kind of turns it in. That may even turn someone who's focused on production. Yeah, I'm challenging you to produce in this area of people, to lower your turnover rate, to increase your internal movement, to increase your just engagement index as it relates to your organization. So I think if you put some specific measurements to it, I think they have no choice but to buy in.
Great.
All right.
Tia?
Yeah.
Ben, do you have something?
No.
It's okay if you do.
I think Tia's given us all kind of gems, but she's muted. There you
go. Muted. Back in the saddle. Okay, get it together. Stop doing that. So you just really have to address everything like it's business. You just cannot treat it as if you're going to address it when it comes up. That's the main key, I feel, is really imperative. You just don't deal with it when it comes up. You tackle it every single day, one piece of it at a time. And this builds the trust on both sides so that you're having, again, a win-win, so that, we're getting the best return on our investments. But then as the employee, I'm loving the culture. I really want to be here. So I just think I call it everydayness. I really can't describe it, but it's just everydayness. The people, they are what move the business.
And Tia, you contract for a lot of larger organizations that matters for the a lot of people that need to be cohesive. So what are some resources that are needed or obstacles to be removed that will allow team members to function as a cohesive group?
Okay, so the main obstacle, you have to remove the barriers. And that comes with that communication. It starts with communication. You know, we sometimes have this inclusion piece of, well, you're only including certain people, not the whole team. You know, I can't fix a problem with my team that is really one person all the time. No, we have to address it head on. So if communication is clear, if communication is intentional and the leaders are actually being authentic with it, then I think that that barrier can be removed. Just be more present, you know, to say that you do care, when, as opposed to just saying, oh, met with her, that's over, done with. Where's the follow-up? Where are you actually showing that, hey, I'm all in? You can't act like it. You have to really be it. So that goes back to that word I keep making up, the everydayness. You know, it's like having a child. You want to see them win. It's like, look, I can't pick you up. You're now 2, you can walk. Now you go to the next phase. And that's the same way that you want to deal with your employees. I just feel sometimes that we have to really also just be mature so that we can grow. You can't stay the child the whole time. You have to grow up. And it's the only way that the organization will grow as well.
You're right, because if you keep giving people milk, they'll never grow teeth to eat the meat.
What am I going to do with you?
Your thought, Tia, actually brought a couple things to light for me. One, you know, it was the biggest struggle, the #1 challenge that was said in the survey is going to be having a reboarding plan for the hybrid remote workforce. And I think a new element of diversity that is going to be required for inclusion here is the remote workforce. So you don't end up with this us and them mentality, right?
Yeah.
You're saying if they're trying to solve a problem and you only bring the in-person because they're right there, they might not be the best minds that you need. So we have to make sure that your reboarding plan is including how you interact and how you involve the decision-making process from now on as well.
To get really tactical on that point. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Definitely remove like any type of language that would be considered like a microaggression. You have to remove that because it keeps us stuck. We all have biases some point or another, but we need to be more mindful before we engage with that type of communication. Because, I mean, whether it's something small or tiny, I'm famous for always, oh, I have to remember where I am. Okay, well, what does that mean? You know, it could become offensive or it could say something other than what I'm really trying to imply here. It's like, oh, you know, I forgot I'm in the South and they move slower because I'm from the North. It's like, I want to get it done. Like, what is taking forever? Do we have to meet 5,000 times? It's like, okay, let all that go and just go with the flow. Trust the process. You just have to trust the process.
We had an us and them issue before the pandemic. We had a hub and smaller offices and remote workforce. And there was a lot of us and them conversation, and it came in on the surveys I do and all the insights that I would hear. And then it just, I think as people are shifting to possibly going back, there's anxiety about that. So we are studying, this is one of my clients, we're studying meetings, we're studying best practices, we're studying when we meet with different time zones, we're studying, you know, materials are required and questions are required to be sent out ahead of time. We're having less meetings, we're having time periods where meetings are not allowed. We're looking at just how we interact and communicate so that it is, you know, inclusive and people can feel like, you know, it works for everyone.
Excellent.
That was our musical interlude.
So sorry, guys, but you know, duty calls when you're the mom. They just pop in whenever they want to.
That's true.
Oh yeah.
So, but
right.
you know, can I just quickly add in that we also have to remember that, you know, for larger corporations, remote work is not new for them. It's just how we are handling it. That's what's new, because the volume is high.
Right. And we got a really great comment from a couple of folks on here that, first of all, thank you very much for some of your detailed information. The comments were very appreciative of that. There was also a comment that said, remember that remote working is not new to many of the medium to larger corporations. That's very true in that it's not new, but it's getting a lot of attention. So it may become new even to those particular companies. And the one thing that really I find when working with leaders is that when, you know, and I'm not suggesting that for this particular comment, but it's about being teachable and really making sure that everything is freshened up for this new environment and where we're going. And Ben, we're gonna go to one last question here to close out this section, and then we're going to you know, really maybe open the group a little bit more to some comments that they would like to make as we finish out our time here at 1:20. So let's just go ahead and deal with the final question that's for Elizabeth, and it's on business continuity. And just the question is, what are some of the policies or procedures? These are specific policies or procedures that may need to have some changes for the new work model or for this adopting work model that we're seeing.
Okay, so I'm going to date myself again, give you the Reader's Digest version for the sake of time. But I do realize that there are many things, and of course, this is not new to some, but it is new to some others. So I think there's some things that you need to have in place. Definitely a strong telecommuting policy, expectations around what's expected. And I know we said we weren't going to dive into the area of IT and safety, but you do need to partner with your IT team. You also need to think about, you know, flexibility, flex hours. Can they work from anywhere? Or do you mean, no, I only mean for you to work remotely, but from home. So there's still that kind of ball and chain there somewhere. So I think you have to see how flexible is your policy and really spell those things out. Because unfortunately, sometimes as HR professionals, you find those employees that find those loopholes and say, what do you mean I can't work off of the coast of the island? You know, what do you mean I'm remote? I'm doing my work. So I think you have to clearly identify those things, identify expectations around flex hours, partner with IT. You know, are there any security risks from moving someone to a remote environment? Equipment, what is a reasonable accommodation as it relates to equipment? What will you provide? Will you have employees saying, hey, you're going to pay my internet bill because you want me to work from home, even though it's an option, I'm choosing to do it, but I want you to also pay my internet bill as well. Also think about mental impact. So are your employee assistance program resources available and easily accessible for employees? Some people may work better in environments where they have that social engagement of coworkers. When you take someone and move them into an isolated environment, they may respond differently, and it may have a strong mental impact. Take a look at your PTO policies, your sick leave policies. Are you compliant with leave of absences under FFCRA or those type of things? Are you up to date? Are you keeping compliant? Payroll issues. Am I working in another state that now impacts my payroll taxes that are, you know, now impacted by this new work location? Communication. How often does the organization communicate? If you're looking to bring me back into the workforce and back into the building, how much time did you give me to get my children together, to get loved ones that I'm caring for together? You know, how much time did you give me? In addition, I think you also have to look at department collaboration. Did I make it easy as an organization? Have we made it easy for collaboration to happen? Although I've taken the person physically out of the office, I still don't want to lose that engagement piece that we have had. That chemistry that took us years to build can now be destroyed in a matter of days or months because we don't have that engagement component. So, and I think the last thing I'll leave with is involved leadership training. Sometimes you've got to unlearn some things, and maybe it may be time to dust off that leadership training that you've been using for the last 15, 20 years that no longer works because it only teaches you how to engage someone that's right in front of you. but now we've got to go beyond and be intentional with those virtual coffee chats or virtual check-ins. So I think that'll give you kind of a good list to get started with. I know it's a lot, but it can be.
No, it's super great. Eloise and Tia, comments? I know Elizabeth gave us a long list, but I know neither one of the two of you are bashful.
She summed it up. What more can you say? You know, I have to be honest that that's really what you need. I'm actually dealing with a client right now who doesn't understand that the employee doesn't understand that they can't work in a coffee shop because they're dealing with confidential information.
Yes.
They see it as they're working remote. So what's the big deal? What's the big issue? Well, the confidentiality of the information is proprietary information. So how are you dealing with that? So I think she hit it. Well, I'm going to say hole in one.
Hole in one. Awesome. Awesome. And
That's
you're
awesome.
right. And what you also think about is being proactive, right? You don't want to wait to be reactive. The worst thing is that you just start doing things and then you have the unintended consequences that come out of some of those choices. So try to be more thoughtful and thinking ahead of time as to what will this consequence bring to you. And certainly you're right about the confidential information. Eloise.
Yeah, we had to look at the remote policy, and then everyone did need to sign it virtually, and it gave us an opportunity, like I said, to be empathetic but also to be more clear. Some of it was pretty general. It was written 10 years ago. I mean, it just wasn't a thing. We used to have a remote advocacy group, people that could advocate on behalf of remote workers and help us point out where we were falling short. And they took on a whole other role this time in trying to help us with engagement of the entire company. So I think just looking for ways to continually learn as HR professionals. What can we learn from each other? What can we do differently when it comes to this? Because it's evergreen. Whatever it is today, it's still going to be different next quarter. It's going to be different next year. We didn't know this was coming. We got to rely on each other to keep learning ourselves. So I think my advice is also, keep investing in your own HR team and in yourself as well.
Great. Excellent. Ben, could this have gone any better?
This was incredible.
I mean, it is totally incredible. And aren't you glad that we got out of the way so that we could get the pros to actually come in and give us some information?
Very, very limited insight. Great insight.
Great. Yes, exactly. I'm going to recommend that you go to gallery view and you also take your self off of stop video, put your video on. So now we can have a little bit of last minute, get a chance to see everybody one more time before we wrap up the day. If you certainly like to do it, you don't have to, but we would encourage that. Some really great points that come from this. Feel free. This is a points to ponder. If you have one thing, and you don't have to explain it a lot, so we've got about 5 or 6 minutes here, so we can close out on time. If you had something that was really impactful to you, what would be that point that you heard today? What is the topic that you heard? Don't have to explain it. What's the topic? Anybody want to go? I can call on a few of you because I know you personally.
I'll jump in. My first one was hearing the resonance of that it's the reboarding plan and all the things that are involved have to be top-down acceptance and or initiated even.
Good, good. Star, Betsy, Delmar, I know you've been very active on our chat, girl. Love that. So come on. What are some of the things that you thought were impactful from today?
Good afternoon, everyone. I was trying to stay off of video. I was supporting Tia in the background, but thank you for the opportunity to just speak. Well, there were several things, and one being something that I believe that was Benjamin that just said that it needs to be cooperation and input from the top down in the reboarding process, and then also be aware that we are living in a different world of work. World of work does not look like it did before the pandemic and obviously during the pandemic. And then just really being open to having the courageous conversations around what diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging really means in the organization. And then also, because I'm actually on a panel this evening with the National Bar Association, we're going to be talking about the mental wellness of people,
Yes.
of employees. So those people that are coming back into maybe a physical space, or they may be staying remotely, need to be very much aware that everyone has gone through mental gymnastics in navigating the work that is going on now in the workplace that is happening now. So
Perfect.
just my 2 cents.
Perfect. Everybody's got 2 cents. I'm telling you, worth more nickels, dimes, and quarters here, Got a low economy. All right, Star, Betsy, I know the two of you. Do you have something else you'd like to say in a couple of minutes before Ben and I wrap up?
We actually talked about this in our quarterly meeting, our quarterly HR meeting last week, because we have hired over 100 team members since the start of the pandemic, and we have about 5 locations. So once we do get back into the office or the hybrid option that we're looking at doing, the conversation about the core values and that leadership has a responsibility to communicate that is very important, because they don't really understand how important the core values are when they're not talking about them all the time. And right now, they're working from home and they're not just getting that message. So
Good.
we're working on communicating that a little bit better.
Awesome. Betsy, you had something?
I love the idea of the listening sessions. I mean, what a revelation to be able to have that open forum and listen. I know one of the companies that I work with has a wall of recognition, and that's where one person can edify another person for doing a good deed and or saying a positive comment. But they also use that wall of recognition of sometimes of what is an issue that we can solve for you. So, but having a listening session where, because maybe not everybody passes the wall of recognition on a daily basis to see that and add, but when you schedule that time to say, we want to hear from you, how can we serve you? I think that is huge.
Perfect. One of the things in your reboarding plan, make sure that you are scheduling time to relate to people, not just about projects. And I want to leave you this. So you want to do morning huddles, you want to do evening debriefs, you want to set up time to make sure you're connecting personally. And my last thing is you want to infuse fun. Why do you want to infuse fun into what you're doing? Because that's what we do in the work environment. And it was very organic and natural. Now you've got to plan for it. So one of my clients actually gave popcorn to all of their employees in a box, unmarked. Everybody opened it at the same time. They had individual team groups. They couldn't get everybody on Zoom all at one time. And they opened it up and they had the experience. Here's why. Our senses have to be involved in our experiences. That's how we relate. That's how our values connect. So everybody got to open it at the same time, see it. They got to hear the crunching of the popcorn. They got to taste it. They got to smell. They got to see it. All their senses were involved in it. So make sure you're including all of that into your plan. Ben, I'm kicking it to you, and then we're going to be out.
I'm so grateful that you 3 ladies gave your time up and your knowledge for this large group. We had a good group the entire session, and that this will be recorded. So I am just grateful that the reboarding for retention was a big part of this, because some of the stats are that 50% of 6-figure earners are planning on leaving their job. We need to figure out to make sure how we keep them. So again, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. So Ben and I are going to teach you one final thing. You put your hands up like this and put your palms facing you. Everybody do this. Everybody who's on it, okay, you do this. And here's what you're going to do. You bring your hands over and they connect, and it's called sign language for cohesion. So if you want to connect, it's your sign language for cohesion is this. And Ben, if we want to have a handshake, how do we do it, Ben? Ready? And we connect over the screen. So there we go. All right, folks, we are out. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a part of our panel discussion on how HR leaders cohesively reboard their workforce. We're out.